Who broke your hand, kid? The voice was gravel aged over decades by salt spray, cordite, and shouting over the roar of helicopter rotors. It belonged to Master Chief Alex Thorne. A living relic from a time before digital camouflage and drone warfare, his call sign, Ares, wasn't ironic. In the teams, you didn't get a name like the God of War unless you'd earned it in blood and steel. He stood in the doorway of the makeshift barracks, a silhouette against the blinding Afghan sun, his shadow falling long and heavy across the young SEAL on the cot. Petty Officer Third Class Sam Carter flinched, not from the question, but from the quiet authority behind it. He was barely 23, fresh out of the grueling 6-month crucible known as Bud AS, and still had the ghost of San Diego's surf in his ears. Here, in this dusty, godforsaken forward operating base, the only water was in plastic bottles that tasted of sun-baked chemicals. Training accident, Master Chief. Sam's voice was hoarse. He didn't look up from the intricate process of trying to tie his bootlaces one-handed. His left hand was encased in a field expedient cast, a clumsy mix of plaster and tactical tape. Just got clumsy on the obstacle course. Ares stepped inside. The air shifted. The small room, already cramped with 2 metal cots and a stack of pelican cases, seemed to shrink. He wasn't a large man, but he occupied space with the density of a collapsed star. His face was a roadmap of forgotten conflicts, his eyes the color of a stormy sea. They missed nothing. Clumsy. Ares repeated the word, letting it hang in the thick, hot air. It wasn't a question, it was a judgment. The O course doesn't break the 4th and 5th metacarpals like that, a wall does. Or a helmet, or someone's boot. He took another step, his boots silent on the dusty plywood floor. He crouched down, bringing himself level with the young SEAL. The intensity in his gaze was a physical force. I'm not the LT, I'm not the captain. I don't give a damn about reports or looking good for the brass. I care about the man to my left and the man to my right, right now. Kid, you're to my right? So, I'll ask you again, and you'll give me the truth. Who broke your hand? Sam Carter finally looked up. His eyes were shadowed, not just from fatigue, but from a deep, soul-crushing weariness that had no place in a man his age. He saw the network of scars on the Master Chief's forearms, the trident tattooed on his bicep faded by sun and time. He saw a man who had forgotten more about combat than Sam would ever know. Sam's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He was a SEAL. He wasn't supposed to complain. He wasn't supposed to be a victim. You endure, you suck it up. That was the code. But the code had been twisted. The Brotherhood had been poisoned. It doesn't matter, Master Chief. Sam's voice was a whisper. I'll be fine. Just need to heal up. Ares stared at him for a long, silent moment. He saw the lie, but he also saw the fear behind it. The fear of being labeled weak. The fear of reprisal. He'd seen this look before in other places, in other men. It was the look of a good soldier being broken by his own side. All right, Carter. Ares stood up, his knees cracking like dry kindling. You're right. It doesn't matter who did it. He turned and walked towards the door. Sam felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment wash over him. Then, Ares stopped, his hand on the door frame. He looked back over his shoulder, and his eyes were chips of ice. It only matters who's going to fix it. He stepped out into the blinding light, leaving Sam alone with the sudden, terrifying realization that the world's most dangerous storm had just changed course and was now heading directly for the heart of his own platoon. The dust, a fine talcum of pulverized earth and forgotten empires, coated everything in a gritty, khaki film. For Master Chief Alex Thorne, this FOB was just one in a long line of dusty purgatories stretching back to the First Gulf War. But something here was different. The air was sour with more than just diesel fumes and burning trash. It was thick with a corrosive silence. He bypassed the command tent, knowing that going through the official channels would be like trying to drain the ocean with a thimble. The platoon commander, Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, known as Bishop, was a politician in a warrior's uniform. He managed up, not down. He saw his men not as assets to be protected, but as chess pieces to be sacrificed for the next promotion. Any complaint would be buried under a mountain of paperwork labeled internal platoon matter. Instead, Ares made his way to the small, heavily fortified communication shack. Inside, shielded from the sun and prying eyes, he used a secure satellite phone, punching in a number he hadn't called in years. After 3 rings, a calm, measured voice answered. "Davis, it's Ares, you in Coronado." There was a pause on the other end. Commander Michael Davis of the Judge Advocate General's Course knew that a call from Alex Thorne was never a social one. The last time they had spoken, Thorne had pulled Davis's fire team out of a catastrophic ambush in Fallujah, carrying the then-lieutenant on his back for the last 2 clicks to the extraction point. It was a debt Davis could never fully repay. "Always for you, Master Chief. What's wrong?" Ares kept his voice low, the words clipped and precise. "I've got a problem here. A cancer in Alpha Platoon. I've got a boot seal with a broken hand and the eyes of a man who's been to hell and back, not from the enemy, but from his own. He's not talking, too scared, but I know the signs." "Who do you think it is?" Davis's voice had turned sharp, the lawyer replacing the friend. "Senior Chief Marcus Kane. Judge." Ares said the name like a curse. Kane was a legend in the teams, a phenomenal operator with more confirmed kills than most platoons combined. He was also a sadist. He saw bodies not as a selection process, but as a template for how men should be treated every single day. He believed in breaking men down and just leaving them there. He called it forging steel. Ares called it what it was, abuse. And I think LCDR Bishop is letting him do it. Kane is Bishop's attack dog. He keeps the platoon looking hard, keeps the numbers up, and Bishop gets to look like a star. It's a sick, symbiotic rot. "You have proof." "My gut," Ares said flatly, "and a kid with 2 broken bones in his hand who claims he fell down. For ASEAL, my gut is proof enough to start digging. I need you, Mike, quietly. I can't go through the command here. Wallace, the CO, he's one of Bishop's mentors. They'll circle the wagons so fast my head will spin. I need an outside eye. Someone with authority who answers to someone else." Commander Davis was silent for a moment, processing the implications. Investigating a decorated senior chief and a rising star LCD are on a forward-deployed SEAL team, it was career suicide if he was wrong. And incredibly dangerous even if he was right. "This isn't just digging, Alex, this is lighting a fuse on a powder keg." "I know," Ares replied, "but if we don't, it's going to blow up anyway. And it'll take good men like Carter with it. I'm not letting that happen on my watch. Not again." The words "not again" hung between them, a ghost of past failures and compromises. Davis sighed. The debt was being called in. "All right, I'll pull some strings. I can get a 2-man team out there under the guise of a command climate assessment. It's thin, but it's the best I can do without tipping our hand. They'll be on the ground in 48 hours, my best people." "But Alex, they can only act on what they can prove. Your gut isn't admissible in court." "Just get them here," Ares said. "I'll get them their proof." He ended the call and stepped back out into the oppressive heat. Across the compound, he saw Alpha Platoon gathering for a mission brief. Senior Chief Kane stood in the center of the group, his arms crossed over his massive chest. He was laughing, a booming, confident sound that made the other men laugh with him. All except for a few of the younger ones, who stood on the fringes, their smiles tight, their eyes empty. Young Sam Carter wasn't there. He was likely in the medical tent, getting a more permanent cast. Lieutenant Commander Bishop stood beside Kane, a hand on his shoulder, the picture of command solidarity. Bishop saw Ares watching them and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. A nod between professionals, a nod that said, "We're all on the same team here." Ares didn't nod back. He just stared, his face an unreadable mask of granite. "No," he thought, "we're not." He had just declared a silent war. He named it in his mind right then, Operation Jolner, because he was about to bring the hammer down. 2 days later, a C-130 landed in a cloud of dust, depositing supplies, mail, and 2 unexpected passengers. Lieutenant Sarah Jenkins and Master-at-Arms Chief Petty Officer David Chen were, on paper, a JAG team conducting a routine command climate survey, a standard procedure for deployed units. In reality, they were Commander Davis's scalpels, chosen for their sharp minds and their ability to be utterly unobtrusive. Jenkins had the disarming smile of a recent college graduate and a mind like a steel trap. Chen was built like a vending machine and had a gift for fading into the background, observing and listening. Ares met them discreetly near the airfield. "Welcome to the Inferno," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Rule 1. You're not here for an investigation. You're here to ask about morale, chow, and mail from home. Rule 2. Everyone lies. Your job is to find the truth in the cracks. Jenkins nodded, her eyes already scanning the compound, taking in the dynamics. Who's our target audience, Master Chief? Start with the boots, the FNGs, the ones who haven't been here long enough to have the fear completely beaten into them. Look for the ones who don't make eye contact. The ones who flinch when a senior NCO walks past. The survey began. Jenkins and Chen set up in a small, private office, interviewing SEALs one by one. The first day was a masterclass in the SEAL Code of Silence. The senior operators were charming, professional. Morale is sky high, Mum. Senior Chief Kane. Toughest operator I know. He pushes us, sure, but that's what makes us the best, the LT. Best officer I've ever worked for. It was a wall of polished stone, perfectly constructed and impenetrable. The younger SEALs were even worse. They fidgeted, they stared at the floor. They gave clipped, one-word answers. Everything's fine. No complaints, just tired. They were terrified. After 2 days, Jenkins and Chen had nothing. That evening, they met with Ares in the shadows behind the generator shed, the deafening roar providing cover for their conversation. It's a wall, Master Chief, Jenkins said, frustration lacing her voice. They're closing ranks. The omerta of the teams is stronger than I imagined. They'd rather swallow broken glass than speak a word against another SEAL, especially one like Kane. Fear is a better motivator than loyalty, Ares countered. Kane has them convinced that speaking up is a sign of weakness, that the real enemy isn't the guy with the AK-47, it's the guy who can't hack the pressure inside the wire. Chen, who had been silent until now, spoke up. There's something else. We ran a check on the official reports. In the last 6 months, Alpha Platoon has had 12 minor training injuries, sprained ankles, a dislocated shoulder. Carter's broken hand all logged as accidents during advanced combat drills. That's 3 times the rate of any other platoon in the command. Statistically, that's not an anomaly. It's a pattern. It's Kane's forging steel, Ares growled. He runs unauthorized stress inoculation drills after hours. Pits the new guys against each other. Full contact, no safety gear. He calls it building resilience. I call it a fight club with a body count. But no one will confirm it, Jenkins said, hitting the core of the problem. Without a witness, all we have is a statistical probability and a bad feeling. That's not enough to even get a warrant. Just then, the door to the nearby barracks creaked open. A young SEAL, barely out of his teens, stepped out. He saw the 3 of them in the shadows and froze like a deer in the headlights. It was a kid named Miller, one of the newest members of the platoon. Ares recognized the same haunted look he'd seen in Carter. Miller quickly turned to walk the other way, but Senior Chief Kane's voice boomed from the barracks doorway. Miller, where the hell you think you're going? Latrine cleaning ain't gonna do itself. Get a damn move on. Miller flinched, a full body tremor, and scurried off into the darkness without a word. Kane stepped out, shirtless, his chest a tapestry of scars and tattoos. He saw Ares and the 2 JAG officers. A slow, predatory smile spread across his face. He walked over, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. Master Chief, Kane said, his voice dripping with false deference. And our guests from JAG. Hope my boys are giving you an earful about the lousy coffee. We gotta do something about that. He was marking his territory, showing them he wasn't intimidated. They're being very professional, Senior Chief, Jenkins replied smoothly, her smile never faltering. Kane's eyes lingered on her for a moment too long. Good. Professionalism is what we're all about here in Alpha. He then looked at Ares, the smile dropping from his face, replaced by a look of cold challenge. We take care of our own business, Master Chief, always have. He turned and walked away, his message delivered as clearly as a rifle shot. The wall of silence wasn't just a product of fear. It was being actively maintained and guarded by the Volf himself. Operation Jolner had just hit a brick wall, and the pressure was starting to build. The presence of the JAG team, however discreet, had the subtlety of a grenade in a library. Whispers slithered through the fob. The command climate survey was fooling no one. Kane and Bishop knew exactly what was happening, and they began to push back. The blowback didn't come from the front. It came from the shadows, where careers were made and broken. The first shot was fired through the chain of command. Captain Wallace, the FOB's commanding officer and Bishop's mentor, summoned Aries to his office. The air conditioning in the plywood hut strained to keep the temperature below 90, but the room felt icy. "What the hell is this, Alex?" Wallace demanded, tossing a folder onto his desk. He was a man who looked like he'd been born in a pressed uniform, his face perpetually set in a mask of stern disapproval. "I'm getting calls from Coronado. Questions are being asked about my command. About Alpha Platoon. You have something to do with this." Aries stood at ease, his expression unreadable. "I raised a concern about the welfare of one of my men, sir, as is my duty." "Your duty," Wallace scoffed, leaning forward. "Your duty is to the mission, to unit cohesion. You don't air our dirty laundry to a bunch of goddamn lawyers. Senior Chief Kane is one of the most effective operators we have. LCDR Bishop is on the fast track to command. You think I'm going to let you derail to stellar careers because one FNG got his hand slapped in training? It was more than a slap, Captain, and you, and I both know it." Wallace's eyes narrowed. "What I know is that SEALs are a different breed. We're not the regular Navy, we push boundaries. We operate in the gray. That's what makes us effective. Sometimes, that gets messy. It's the cost of doing business. You, of all people, should understand that." He was appealing to the old code, the idea that what happens in the teams, stays in the teams. "There's a difference between the gray and the dark, sir," Aries said, his voice dropping an octave. "And what's happening in Alpha is pitch black. We're not forging warriors. We're creating monsters and victims." "Your opinion is noted, Master Chief," Wallace said dismissively, standing up. It was a clear signal the conversation was over. "The JAG team will finish their little survey, and they will leave. You will focus on your duties. And you will stay the hell away from my platoon. Is that understood?" It wasn't a question, it was a threat. Aries knew he had been officially warned. He was now operating without a net. The second assault was more insidious. Anonymous posts began appearing on a popular, unofficial forum for special operations personnel. The posts were carefully worded, never mentioning names, but the implications were clear. "Heard a certain legendary E9 on a sandy vacation spot is trying to play politics. Sad to see one of the old guard go soft, probably angling for a cushy instructor job back in the States. Rumor is, a JAG team is sniffing around one of the West Coast platoons on deployment. Why? Because a boot couldn't handle the pressure and ran crying to Grandpa. The teams are getting weak." The posts were designed to undermine Aries' credibility, painting him as a washed-up relic and a traitor to the Brotherhood. They were also a message to the younger SEALs. This is what happens when you talk. You'll be labeled a rat, a crybaby. Your career will be over. The atmosphere on the FOB grew toxic. Men who used to greet Aries with respect now averted their eyes. The members of Alpha Platoon, with the exception of Kane and Bishop, became ghosts, speaking only when necessary. The wall of silence was now reinforced with fear and suspicion. Aries was being isolated, cast out from the tribe he had given his life to. He found Sam Carter by the perimeter fence, staring out at the desolate landscape. The kid's new cast was already covered in grime. "It's my fault," Carter said, not looking at him. I should have just kept my mouth shut. Now they're coming after you." Aries stood beside him, following his gaze to the heat-shimmering horizon. "This isn't on you, son. This fire was burning long before you got here. You just had the misfortune of being the one who got burned first. Now, you have a choice. You can let it consume you, or you can use it." "Use it for what?" Carter's voice was bitter. "They'll never listen to me." "Maybe not," Aries said, "but courage is contagious. You standing up, even quietly, it might just give someone else the strength to do the same." But as Aries walked away, a sliver of doubt crept into his mind. He had faced down enemies with guns and bombs his entire life, but this was different. He was fighting shadows, whispers, and a twisted sense of loyalty that protected the corrupt. The hammer of Mjolnir had swung, but it had hit an invisible wall. And for the first time in a long time, Master Chief Alex Thorne felt the immense, crushing weight of the fortress he was trying to tear down. The pressure campaign was working. Commander Davis called from Coronado, his voice strained. "Alex, my boss is getting heat from the Admiral's office. Captain Wallace is painting this as a witch hunt, a personal vendetta. He's saying you've got an old-school grudge against Kane's training style. They're threatening to recall my team. They're stonewalling, Mike, Aries said, his knuckles white as he gripped the sat phone. They're waiting us out. They know we have nothing concrete. Then you need to find something. And fast, Davis urged. The window is closing. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely of places. It wasn't a confession. It was a mistake. A moment of hubris from Senior Chief Kane. Late one night, Jenkins was reviewing the platoon's equipment checkout logs, a tedious task she hoped might reveal some anomaly. She noticed that a set of high-end tactical GoPro cameras, normally reserved for mission recording, were being signed out almost every other night by Kane himself. But there were no corresponding mission reports. They were being used for something off the books. She brought it to Aries. What would he be filming? Master Chief. Ares's face hardened. His stress inoculation sessions, his fight club. He's not just doing it, he's documenting it. For his own damn library of sadism. It's a trophy. The problem remained, they couldn't get access to the footage. It would be stored on a personal hard drive, locked away. They still needed someone on the inside to give it to them. Their chance came disguised as tragedy. During one of Kane's late-night sessions, the young SEAL named Thorne, who had frozen in fear outside the barracks, suffered a severe concussion. Kane and Bishop tried to pass it off as a fall during PT, but the story didn't add up. Miller was medevac to Bagram. His future in the team's over. The incident shattered the fragile silence. For the other young SEALs, this was a bridge too far. One of them had been sacrificed, cast aside like a broken piece of equipment. That evening, a different young operator, a quiet communications specialist named Diaz, approached Chief Chen near the chow hall. His hands were trembling. "Chief, can I talk to you? Somewhere private." Chen led him to the secure office where the interviews were held. Jenkins was there. Diaz was sweating, his eyes darting towards the door. "They broke him," Diaz whispered, his voice cracking. "Miller, he's a good dude. He wasn't fast enough. Kane made an example of him. He had two of the bigger guys, they held him down. It wasn't training, it was a beating." "Can you testify to that, petty officer?" Jenkins asked gently. Diaz shook his head, fear flashing in his eyes. "No way, Kane would find out. He'd kill me." But he hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "I can do something else. The footage. Kane makes us film everything. He keeps the files on a ruggedized hard drive in his personal locker. He thinks it's his insurance. Proof that everyone participated. But he's arrogant. The password, it's the date of his first combat deployment. We all know it. It's part of his legend." Jenkins and Chen exchanged a look. This was it. "Getting it is the problem," Diaz continued. "His locker is triple locked. I can't get in." "You don't have to," a low voice said from the doorway. Aries stepped in, having been summoned by Chen via discreet text. He looked at Diaz, a flicker of pride in his weary eyes. "You've done enough, son. More than enough. You just gave us the key. We'll handle the door." Aries knew he had only one chance, and it involved crossing a line he had never crossed before. He couldn't order a search. He couldn't get a warrant. He had to bend the rules to the breaking point. He waited until 0200, when Alpha Platoon was out on a short-range reconnaissance mission. He, Jenkins, and Chen went to the empty barracks. The air was still and heavy with the smell of sweat and gun oil. Kane's locker stood against the far wall, a steel behemoth adorned with a skull and crossbones sticker. "This is an illegal search, Master Chief," Jenkins stated, not as a warning, but as a confirmation. "Anything we find will be inadmissible." "We're not looking for evidence for a trial," Aries said, pulling a small, heavy-duty tool from his belt. "We're looking for the truth, and I'm not leaving this country without it." With two sharp, practiced movements, Aries bypassed the locks. It wasn't breaking and entering, it was surgery. Inside, amongst the neatly folded uniforms and specialized gear, was a small, black hard drive. They took it back to the comm shack. Chen plugged it into a secure laptop. Jenkins typed in the password Diaz had given them. The drive opened. It was worse than they had imagined. Dozens of video files, organized by date. They clicked on the most recent one. The video was shaky, filmed in the green-tinged gloom of night vision. It showed a makeshift ring, surrounded by the exhausted, grim-faced members of Alpha Platoon. In the center, Miller was on his knees, and Kane was standing over him, screaming, "You are weak. You are a liability. You are going to get us all killed." The video showed Kane ordering two other SEALs to hold Miller down. It showed the beating. It was cold, methodical, and brutal. And standing just outside the ring of light, watching with a detached expression, was Lieutenant Commander Bishop. They watched in horrified silence. The footage was the smoking gun. It was undeniable, irrefutable proof of systemic, sadistic abuse, sanctioned by an officer. Jenkins finally broke the silence, her voice trembling with rage. "That's it, we've got them." Ares stared at the frozen image on the screen, image of a young warrior being broken by his own leaders. His face was like stone, but his eyes burned with a righteous fire that had been simmering for 30 years. "Yes," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl, "we've got them. And now we're going to burn their world to the ground." The time for subtlety was over. The time for whispers and shadows was done. It was time for the hammer to fall. The next morning, before the sun had baked the humanity out of the air, Ares sent a single message to every chief and senior chief on the FOB, regardless of their unit. Chief's Mess. Briefing Room 20700. Mandatory. There was no explanation. None was needed. A summons from Ares was not to be ignored. At 0700, the room was packed. 20 of the most seasoned, respected, and dangerous enlisted men in the U.S. military sat around the large conference table. They were the spine of the special operations community, the keepers of the culture. The air was thick with tension and unspoken questions. Senior Chief Marcus Kane was there, sitting near the head of the table, looking supremely confident, even bored. He thought this was about some new operational procedure. Ares walked in and shut the door behind him. He didn't go to the podium. He stood at the far end of the table, placing a laptop in front of him. He let the silence stretch, meeting the eyes of every man in the room. 30 years, he began, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. 30 years, I have worn this trident on my chest. I've buried friends, I've bled on 3 continents. I did it all believing in one thing: the man next to me, the brotherhood. He paused, letting the words sink in. That brotherhood is built on trust. It's a sacred pact. We push each other to be better, to be stronger, to be harder, but there is a line. There is a line between making a man hard and breaking a man for sport. There is a line between leadership and tyranny. And for some time now, in this command, that line has been erased. Kane shifted in his seat, a flicker of annoyance on his face. Master Chief, with all due respect, if this is about the FNGs complaining about tough training, this is not about tough training, Senior Chief. Ares's voice suddenly cracked like a whip, silencing Kane instantly. Every man in the room straightened up. They had never heard this tone from him before. This was not the calm, steady Ares they knew. This was the god of war. This is about torture, Ares continued, his voice low and seething. This is about a cancer that has been allowed to grow in the heart of our community. A sickness that confuses cruelty with strength. A perversion of everything we are supposed to stand for. He looked directly at Kane. We are SEALs. We are supposed to be the quiet professionals. We hunt the wolves of the world. We do not become them. We do not prey on our own. Without another word, he turned on the laptop and projected the video onto the large screen at the front of the room. The shaky, green-lit footage of Miller's beating filled the wall. The sounds of Kane's voice, the grunts of pain, filled the silent room. The atmosphere changed from tense to volcanic. The chiefs watched, their faces first confused, then horrified, then filled with a cold, slow-burning rage. This wasn't training. This wasn't building resilience. This was an animalistic beatdown, a public execution of a man's spirit. The sight of Lieutenant Commander Bishop watching passively in the background was, for these senior enlisted men, the ultimate betrayal. An officer sanctioning the abuse of one of his men. When the video ended, Ares shut the laptop. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy, and lethal. No one looked at Kane. Kane himself was ashen. The color drained from his face. His arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the dawning horror of exposure. Ares's voice was barely a whisper now, yet it was the loudest thing in the room. This is what we have become. This is what we protect with our silence. If this is the brotherhood now, then I want no part of it. He slowly began to unpin the gleaming golden trident from his uniform, and neither should any of you. That act, more than the video, broke the dam. A senior chief from another platoon, a man known for his stoicism, slammed his fist on the table. That's not the teams, that is not who we are. Another one stood up, his eyes locked on Kane. You son of a bitch, you did that to one of our own. The spell was broken. The chief's mess, the sacred bastion of the enlisted brotherhood, had turned on one of its own. The cultural immune system was finally kicking in. At that exact moment, the door opened, Lieutenant Jenkins and Chief Chen entered, followed by two armed master-at-arms. They weren't here for a survey anymore. Senior Chief Marcus Kane, Jenkins said, her voice clear and cold. You are under arrest for violations of the UCMJ, including assault, hazing, and conduct unbecoming. Kane looked around the room, searching for an ally, for a friendly face. He found none. He found only the hard, unforgiving eyes of 20 brothers who had just cast him out. He was no longer at SEAL. He was just a criminal in a uniform. As they cuffed him, Jenkins looked at the other chiefs. LCDR Bishop is being taken into custody in his office as we speak. She then looked at Ares, a look of profound respect in her eyes. But Ares knew it wasn't over. Kane and Bishop were symptoms. The disease was higher up. He turned to Chen. Did you get into Wallace's computer? Chen gave a grim nod. He's a creature of habit. Used an encrypted folder to communicate with Bishop. We got a warrant based on the video. Found everything. Emails telling Bishop to handle the morale issues internally. Memos commending Kane for his unorthodox but effective training methods. He knew. He knew, and he covered it up to protect his command and his protege. The final piece was in place. As Kane was led out of the room in disgrace, Ares picked up the sat phone. He dialed Captain Wallace. Captain, he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. There are 2 MPS outside your office. I suggest you open the door. The fortress had crumbled. Mjolnir had not just struck. It had shattered the foundation. The arrests of a senior chief, a lieutenant commander, and a captain sent a seismic shock wave through the entire special operations community. The fallout was immediate and messy. The story was leaked to the press, and headlines about a SEAL fight club and a culture of brutality dominated the news cycle. The carefully cultivated image of the quiet professional was shattered. In the ensuing chaos, Ares became the unlikely center of the storm. To some, he was a hero, a whistleblower who had the courage to clean his own house. To the entrenched old guard, he was a traitor who had broken the code and brought shame upon the Trident. He ignored both. His focus was singular, rebuilding from the ashes. The court-martial was a grim, necessary affair. The GoPro footage was the centerpiece of the prosecution's case, an unblinking, damning witness. Sam Carter and Diaz testified, their voices quiet but steady, their courage inspiring a handful of other young SEALs to come forward. Kane, stripped of his bravado, was sentenced to 20 years in Leavenworth and a dishonorable discharge. Bishop, for his role in sanctioning and covering up the abuse, received 10 years and was dismissed from the service. Captain Wallace, convicted of dereliction of duty and obstruction of justice, saw his career end in disgrace. The hammer of justice had fallen. But punishment was not the same as healing. Alpha Platoon was broken, gutted of its leadership and mired in suspicion and shame. The command wanted to disband the unit, scatter the men, and pretend it never happened. Ares fought back. No, he argued in a heated meeting with the Admiral. You don't heal a wound by cutting off the limb. You clean it, you stitch it up, and you make it stronger than it was before. Give me the platoon, let me rebuild it. Reluctantly, the Admiral agreed. Ares, a Master Chief, was given unprecedented authority over the training and restructuring of an entire SEAL platoon. His first act was to bring in a new officer, a young lieutenant fresh from the Naval Academy, who was known for his intellect and empathy, not his swagger. His second act was to have a one-on-one meeting with every remaining member of the platoon, from the most senior petty officer first class down to the newest boot. He didn't ask about the case. He asked about them. About their families, their hopes, their fears. He listened. His third and most important act was to find Sam Carter. The young SEAL was going through mandatory counseling, his physical wounds healing far faster than his psychological ones. He had put in his papers to leave the Navy. Ares found him on the beach in Coronado, watching the new class of Bud AS trainees struggle in the surf. "They told me you're quitting," Ares said, standing beside him. "I can't do it anymore, Master Chief," Sam said, his voice hollow. "I came here to fight the enemy. I didn't know the enemy was wearing the same uniform." "The enemy wasn't the uniform," Ares corrected him gently. "It was a few bad men who corrupted what that uniform stands for. They're gone now. What's left is us, and a choice. Do we let them have the last word? Do we let their legacy of brutality be the final story of Alpha Platoon?" He knelt in the sand, picking up a small, smooth stone. "Or do we write a new chapter, one about real strength? The strength to trust the man next to you. The strength to speak up when something is wrong. The strength to build, not just to destroy. I'm not asking you to stay for the Navy, Carter. I'm asking you to stay for the men who will come after you. To help me build a platoon where what happened to you can never happen again." He placed the stone in Sam's good hand. "You're not a victim, you're a survivor. And your scars are a testament to your strength. They're a reminder. We need that reminder. I need it." Sam looked from the stone in his hand to the earnest, weary face of the Master Chief. He saw a man who was not just giving orders, but was asking for help. For the first time in months, he felt a flicker of the purpose he had lost. He closed his hand around the stone. The rebuilding of Alpha Platoon became Ares's magnum opus. He threw out Kane's brutal playbook and instituted a new philosophy. The training was still impossibly hard, but it was based on teamwork and problem-solving, not on pain and intimidation. He created a mentorship program, pairing senior operators with the new boots, making them responsible for their welfare and development. The new motto, plastered on the wall of the platoon hut, was simple: honor the man, not the myth. It was a slow, arduous process. Trust, once shattered, is rebuilt in millimeters. But gradually, the culture began to shift. The quiet confidence of true professionals began to replace the loud arrogance of bullies. The men started talking to each other again, not just about the mission, but about their lives. They started acting like a brotherhood again. And at the heart of it, leading the way for the younger men, was Sam Carter, who had withdrawn his resignation and become the platoon's most respected junior leader. The survivor had become a healer. 6 months after the court-martial, Alpha Platoon was declared operational again. They had been reforged, not in the fire of Kane's sadism, but in the steady heat of Ares's integrity. Their greatest test, however, was yet to come. The proof of their transformation would not be found in a training exercise, but in the crucible of a real-world mission, where trust is the only currency that matters. The mission came down with no warning, as they always do. A high-value target, a notorious bombmaker, was tracked to a fortified compound in a hostile, mountainous region. The intel was fresh, but the window was tight. It was a classic SEAL operation: difficult insertion, overwhelming violence of action, and a dangerous extraction. It was also the first real-world test for the newly rebuilt Alpha Platoon. As they kitted up in the belly of a C-17, the mood was different. There was no loud, boastful posturing. There was a quiet, focused intensity. The senior operators ran checks on the younger men's gear, not as a form of harassment, but as a genuine act of concern. Master Chief Thorne moved among them, a calming presence, his eyes checking every detail. He wasn't going in with theme. His role now was to command and support, but his spirit was woven into the fabric of the team. The insertion was flawless. They fast-roped from Blackhawks under the cover of a moonless night, landing silently outside the compound's perimeter. The plan was simple. Two teams would assault from opposite sides, collapsing the enemy's defense in a coordinated attack. Sam Carter was the point man for his team, Team 2. It was a position of immense trust and danger. A year ago, Kane would have never given him that responsibility. But the new platoon leader knew that Sam's senses were sharp, his judgment sound. The breach was explosive and violent. Team 1 blew the main gate, drawing the bulk of the enemy's fire. As planned, Team 2 went over the rear wall. They moved through the compound with a fluid, lethal grace. The new training paid off. They communicated with hand signals and quiet clicks on their radios, each man knowing exactly where his teammates were, covering every angle, trusting the man behind him to protect his back. They cleared the first 2 buildings, but the main structure, where the target was believed to be, was a hornet's nest. Heavy machine gun fire erupted from a second-story window, pinning them down. The plan was starting to unravel. "We're pinned," Team 2's leader shouted into his comms. "Can't advance." From the command center miles away, Ares watched the drone feed, his heart pounding. The old way would have been to just bull rush the position, sacrificing men for the objective. But Sam Carter saw something else, a narrow, dark alleyway to the side of the main building that wasn't on the schematics. It was a huge risk. It could be a dead end, a perfect kill box. But it could also be a way to flank the machine gun nest. "I have a possible flank." Sam's voice came over the radio, calm and clear despite the chaos. "Request permission to move." His team leader hesitated. It was a massive deviation from the plan. He looked at the men around him, then made a decision built on the new foundation of trust. "Go, we'll cover you." Sam and one other SEAL, Diaz, slipped into the alley. The darkness was total. They moved slowly, carefully, every sense screaming. Back in the command center, their helmet cam feeds were all Ares could see. It was two green, shaky windows into a lethal unknown. The alley led to a small, rickety staircase at the back of the building. It was their way in. They climbed, their steps silent, the gunfire from the front of the house covering any small sound. They reached a door. Sam placed a small breaching charge, gave Diaz a nod, and blew it. They stormed into the room. The machine gun crew, focused on the firefight outside, were caught completely by surprise. In seconds, it was over. Sam's voice came over the comms, his breathing heavy but controlled. "Machine gun is down. Flank is open." That was the turning point. With the heavy weapons silenced, both teams stormed the building. The bombmaker was captured alive, and the mission was a success. The extraction was clean. Back at the FOB, as the exhausted but triumphant team disembarked, the first man to greet them on the tarmac was Master Chief Thorne. He didn't say much. He just walked down the line of his men, clapping them on the shoulder, his eyes filled with a fierce, fatherly pride. When he reached Sam Carter, he stopped. "You saw the shot. You took it," Ares said, his voice low. "That's not something you can teach with fear, kid. That comes from trust. Trust in yourself, and trust in your team to have your back." Sam just nodded, too tired to speak, but a small smile touched his lips. The ghosts of the past had finally been laid to rest. Months later, Master Chief Alex Thorne stood on that same beach in Coronado, watching a new generation of tadpoles get battered by the waves. His retirement papers were filed. His war was finally over. He had fixed the broken thing. He had rebuilt the Brotherhood, not in the image of a brutal myth, but in the reality of honorable, courageous men. He had proven that true strength isn't about how hard you can hit, but about how you lift up the man next to you. The culture of the SEAL teams hadn't changed overnight, but a new course had been set. The ship was turning. The legacy of men like Kane and Bishop is a warning, a reminder that even the most elite organizations can fall prey to the cancer of unchecked power and a culture of silence. But the legacy of men like Alex Thorne and the courage of young SEALs like Sam Carter is a promise. A promise that honor, integrity, and true brotherhood will always be the sharpest weapons in any warrior's arsenal. The story you've just heard is a testament to the fact that the toughest battles are often fought, not against a foreign enemy, but against the demons within our own ranks. What do you think is the most important quality of a true leader? Is it strength, or is it compassion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters, and it helps us all learn. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Thank you for watching.